We are amazed by the phenomenal railway connectivity of high-speed railways connecting different parts of China. But is this super connectivity really worth it for China? Maybe not. Surprisingly, the second largest economy is on the verge of experiencing a hilarious debt because of this widespread railway connectivity, which is almost 3 times the size of the debt of Evergrande. The marvelous development in the parts of the country and excessively rising GDP has astonished the rest of the world. But this was not a smooth path for China. With rising GDP, there was also almost doubling of debt-GDP ratio to around a crazy 300%. Some private entities, like Evergrande, have contributed to hilarious debt, but on the same page, we have a government that is responsible for one of the largest economies in debt. Hey guys, welcome back to our channel, where we roll around the exciting stuff and amaze you with facts and figures. Excited to know a diplomatic situation of massive debt in China? Before we jump in all the facts and exciting reasons for the current situation in China, hit the bell icon and subscribe to our channel so you do not miss out on any of the happening facts and videos from our channel. For the past 30 years, the level of development in China was marvelous. The rural population was shifting to urban areas for jobs and to improve their standard of living. The majority of local commuters found airways a bit big budget to manage their living. Traveling long haul through bus was tedious. The Chinese government tried to fill in this gap by constructing super connectivity between almost all the major towns of the country. Since the 1990s, the state has invested heavily to build sophisticated high-speed rails or HSR networks. This extraordinary development in China was enjoyed by many commuters, as it was much cheaper than airways. However, it took a bit more time than airways. Their core aim was to transport people from one town to another with super speedy railways which fit into their pocket. But gradually, they began allowing the transportation of small-scale express delivery services. The HSR network is capable of covering 200 miles per hour and can eventually transport a huge bunch of people to different parts of the country in a matter of a few hours. The logistics service has proved to be highly advantageous to cold chain express delivery of food and medicines. The idea behind constructing superconnectivity of speedy railways is super, but what is usually ignored is the massive debt caused by the railway construction. Over the last decade, the Chinese government has invested hundreds of millions of dollars in constructing the world's largest railway connectivity. Without a doubt, millions of jobs are created for the public, and GDP statistics have inflated amazingly. But with this obsession comes in hand the billions of dollars of financial losses and hundreds of billions of dollars of debt for the state that is generated every year and whooping enormous. It almost accumulated to 3 times the size of debt of Evergrande liabilities, and eventually prompted a halt for further development of the super speedy railway network. Initially, the HSR network was advantageous to locals, with cheaper ticket fares, swift long journeys, and highly profitable to the government. But one dark stretch changed everything. It was the global financial crisis in 2008, where the entire globe was suffering from frozen finances. Every part of the world was suffering, so China's private sector was affected the most. The private sector was contracted enormously with constant bankruptcies declared, and in due course, unemployment peaked up. The government felt the intense need of generating employment by building more and more HSR networks. The Chinese government connected every town of the country and started off by constructing these HSR networks from the Beijing and Shanghai regions of China. In a reasonable length of time, the government was successful in connecting every city of the country, which made traveling from one end to another end effortless at affordable rates. Practically, when the government has connected each city and even generated employment for the public, then the government should be happy to announce mission accomplished. But this was not the case that happened in China. The government planned to construct the speedy railway lines in the rough terrains where rarely people commuted on those areas. The construction costs and the labor involved in the construction of railway lines in those areas were really huge, and the time taken for construction continued for long years. Even after construction was completed, the state faced huge losses because of rarely used networks in some deserted areas. The next trait that leads to Chinese governments in huge debt is operating costs for such widely spread speedy rail networks. One of the professors at the School of Economics and Management from Beijing commented that operating costs of the railway are covered when the transport density of the high-speed rail network reaches 36 million passengers per kilometer. However, from the research, it was concluded that in China the average transport density is only about 17 million, which is almost half of the required transport density, and eventually it is a challenge to cope with the operating costs. The highest transport density of the Beijing-Shanghai railway line is approximately 48 million passengers per kilometer, and on the contrary, the lowest transport density is only about 2.3 million passengers per kilometer. The operating costs for HSR include electricity maintenance and labor costs, from which electricity is the most expensive. For actively operating HSR, around $782 to $1,400 worth of electricity per hour is required, which is insane. Some of the lines or the patches with low usage are not also able to cover the basic electricity costs. Generally, servicing required for the stability and smoothness of perfectly high-speed railway tracks is very high. It almost accumulates to 2 to 3 times the cost of what is usually required for the servicing of normal railway tracks. The perfect trains are usually of lighter weight. So are HSR trains, which weigh around 17 tons, and that of ordinary trains weigh 23 tons. However, lighter trains are capable of carrying lighter weight and not heavy-duty items like tanks and missiles. So these HSR can only be utilized for carrying public and some lightweight items like perishable goods. Already, the fare of HSR is 3 to 4 times the fare of ordinary railways. So will the public afford it? Or is it a reasonable decision to shoot up the fare of HSR? No, it will obviously not be a reasonable choice to increase the fare to increase the revenue for operations. According to research from China, the occupancy rate for HSR is around a mere 30%, and the vacancy rate is around as high as 70%. This clearly signifies Chinese population cannot afford to travel in HSR trains. So the probability of the occupancy rate dwindling to 15 or 20% if the fare rises. The hours they save for traveling a long stretch will cost them as high as $50, which is quite difficult to earn for common people. The next solution could be reducing the costs and raising the ridership for HSR. Is it again a reasonable solution? For doubling the speed of HSR, the energy costs increase up to 4 times, which again is trouble for the railways. If the fare for HSR is lowered, this eventually will lead to more passengers traveling through HSR, but the revenue they will generate after implementation of the solution will be the same as what they are currently generating. The government has constructed insane HSR networks, but with low traveling density, we have low revenues, and this is eventually the major reason for hilarious debt and financial losses over the years in China. After huge fundings allotted for HSR construction over the last decade altered the funding allotment for construction of ordinary railways. The market share of China's rail freight turnover has been rapidly declining at a rate of 3 percentage points per year, which should be feared by the government, and instantaneous steps should be taken for covering the losses. With all the losses and debts in China, the government commented that with the bid support of HSR and other industries, they can boost up the GDP levels to the next levels. They have a great plan to develop the country with HSR and boost up the urbanization in the country. At first, the government commented that they built these HSR networks for a social cause and do not have any profit motives behind it. The government is still optimistic about this HSR project and aims for developments, though this idea sounds quite unreasonable because there is no strong evidence supporting the idea. All these are just theoretical ideas the government is trying to develop and do not showcase any strong aim in practical life. These unprofitable railroads in China had a serious toll on the financial sectors. The debt is so high that it cannot be covered by GDP in one shot. Insane, isn't it? What could be the future of HSR is a blurred image, but hoping that China will recover soon from its HSR debts and prove to be highly beneficial for the second largest economy of the globe. What do you feel about a blurred threat between Chinese massive debts and the huge HSR connectivity spread in the entire country? Do let us know your views on China and its debts in the comments below. Before ending, don't forget to hit the bell icon if you've liked the video, and make sure you subscribe to our channel so as not to miss any of the upcoming interesting factful videos on our channel. See you in the next video.